Welcome to Basic Android Development. In our last recorded session, we looked at starting an activity. Now we're going to look at something else, which is starting an activity and getting a result back. So in our last lesson, we made it so that you could click on Find Specimen, and it would take you to the search screen. And then from the search screen, you could just navigate backwards. Nothing really happened with it, though. What we're going to have this time, we're going to kind of mock the search screen and have it return just a known piece of data. So we're going to look at a different way of starting an activity, and that is starting an activity for a result. So you see, with our search activity, we are just starting that activity as if it were, we're just navigating straight to that activity. Now in the Live Plant Places application, when you go to the search screen, from the GPS of plan screen, you're typically wanting to associate the GPS location with a plant. So the search screen will return a plant. We're going to simplify that. We'll just have it return a normal, like a string or something like that. But the difference is instead of start activity, we make it start activity for result. Just a subtle difference there. Now it's going to be mad at me because I have to pass it one more piece of data. Okay, I have to pass it an intent, and I also have to pass it some value. Okay, reason being, from one activity, I can call numerous other activities for result. When they come back, when I get those results, it's going to call a method. The trick is it's going to call the same method for all of those activities. So I need some way to discriminate the activities. In other words, I need some way to determine which activity is returning data to me. So we'll use a number. But in Java programming, it's never a good idea just to have kind of a nameless number. So I'm going to use something that Eclipse will give me. Actually, one moment, please. Let me resize this so it looks a little better on our screen. I'm going to use something that Eclipse gives me called extract to constant. I'm going to highlight the number, and I'm going to press Control 1, and I'm going to choose extract to constant. What this allows me to do is basically give that number a name. Okay, give that number a name, something meaningful to me. Int is fine. When I tab, you see that _1. This is where I give it a name, so I'll say something like plant underscore search. When defining constants, we typically use all uppercase letters and an underscore. Okay, and what we're doing is we're just defining a variable. It's just a variable that means something. It's a variable that means this variable stands for plant search. And we typically refer to it by the constant name plant search instead of the number. Because frankly, the number is meaningless. It's the word plant search we're more concerned about. I'm going to change it to public, by the way. Public will make it easier to access this variable from other places. Whoops, okay, somehow I changed it back to a 1. So let me change that to plant search. There we go. And enter. And we're all set. Okay, and then I save. Okay, disconnect the debugger for now. Okay, now what's going to happen is it is going to call that plant search screen, and the plant search screen can return data to me. Now the trick is it's going to return data to this class, the class we're looking at right now. So the trick is, how do we receive that data? Well, we receive that data by creating a method called onActivityResult. Okay, we need to create a method, and again, a method, not a method call, but a method called onActivityResult. So, once again, there's a little shortcut we can do if we just type ONAC like so, hold down Control and hit space. I can keep typing on activity result. Eventually, as I start typing, notice as I type, it filters this list down. So I can type as much as I want. But on activity result is the method that will get called. I'll put some documentation to this effect. Method that will get called when an activity returns data to us. Okay, you see that this has what we call 3 parameters. Okay, 3 parameters. By the way, we don't need these 2 lines here. I'm going to go ahead and remove them. We see that this has 3 parameters: a request code, a result code, and intent data. Okay, the first thing called a request code, that's returning this plant search constant back to us. And again, we can and we will call multiple intents from this screen that will return data. That's how we'll know this is plant search data. Okay, so there we go with plant search. Next is the result code. The result code tells us if the activity went as expected or not. And then data is any additional data it wishes to pass to us. So first thing I'm going to do is put in an if test. I'm going to say if, open paren and close paren, if request, let's say result code equal result underscore OK. Okay, open and close paren. Okay, first of all, what is an if test? An if test is just a control structure. It's a thing in logic that says make a decision. Okay, what we'll typically do is we will typically compare two things. Here we're comparing result code with the constant OK. Now result OK, remember I told you about a constant. That's just a constant that says everything went well. So effectively what this is saying is if everything went well, we will execute the logic between the following curlies. Okay, result code equals result okay. If everything went well, then we execute what's in the curlies. On the other hand, if we called an activity and something went wrong, it might return something other than result okay. Next, what I need to do is I need to say if request code equal plant search. Okay, what that means is, and I'll put a comment to this effect, are we receiving data from the plant search activity? Okay, if request code equal plant search. Okay, because remember we can call multiple activities, and those activities can they can return data, and if they return data, they will all call this method. So if request code equal plant search, that means if we've arrived here, we got good data, and the data came from plant search. Okay? So we'll save this, and then I'm going to say data. Data is what we receive from this other activity, and I'll say data dot get let's see, get string extra. Okay, this is a piece of data that we're going to receive from that other screen. Data.getString extra, and I need to give it a name. We'll say plant name, in quotes with an underscore between plant and name. Okay, once again, we don't really like these string literals like this where we have a string in quotes. This is saying data.getStringExtra. It's saying there is a plant name somewhere and there's a value associated with that name. In programming we call that a name value pair. Again, there's a plant name somewhere and there's a value associated with that name. So I'm giving you the plant name, and what I want in return is the value that's associated with that name. Okay? So we'll typically save this data to a variable. I'm going to hold down control. I'm going to put my cursor on data.getStringExtra, hold down control and press 1. And one of the options is assign statement to, let's say assign statement to new field. What this will do is this will make a variable for us, and right now it's asking me what I want to name the variable. I'll call it plant name. A variable is simply a place in memory. Okay, so what we're doing is we're taking this piece of data that we're going to get back from the plant search, and we are storing it in a variable called plant name. And because I call that variable a field, that basically makes it an attribute. If you remember when we talked about classes and objects, we talked about attributes, and attributes are adjectives. Adjectives describe a class or an object. So what I'm doing here is I'm defining an attribute called plant name, and this is the plant that we're going to associate GPS data with. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and tab, and what we'll see is up above it declared a variable for me. It's given an access modifier, a variable type, and then finally a variable name. Okay, and there we go. When I'm satisfied with that, I simply hit enter and tell it, okay, thank you, that's exactly what I want. Okay, now the trick is we're missing a piece here because the plant search screen has to return some data to us. So we need to take care of that next. But first, let's do a little bit more conditioning to make this prettied up. So I'm going to put a comment here, get the plant name data that was returned to us from the plant search screen. Okay. That plant name as a string will work, but here again, it's a good idea to make that a constant instead. So I'm going to hold down Control and press 1, and I'm going to say extract to constant. Okay. Everything's good, but I am going to change it to public. Public means that my other activity will be able to use, my other activity will be able to use this as well. Okay. So again, I make it a constant, that way my other activity will be able to use it as well. A constant just means it's a variable, that's all, with a descriptive name that describes what it is. Okay? Okay. So far we're doing pretty well. One thing I will do is, so we can kind of watch what happens, is I will pop up a toast to show that we have successfully received data from plant search and save. Okay. We're pretty much all set with this right now. What we might want to do some more, we might want to do a bit more. Actually, I'll tell you what we can do. EDT description. Why don't we, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't do the toast yet. Toast.makeText this, comma, string extra, toast dot length long dot show. And I thought I had renamed string extra. Let me 1 second. I thought I refactored. Let me refactor this and rename it. Instead of string extra, let's call this plant name. That's a lot more descriptive. Okay, there we go. So we're going to pop it up. Also, I'm going to set the plant name in the description. Okay, EDT. If you remember, we have this edit text field called description. So EDT description. What we need to do is call set text on this. And we can simply pass that the plant name, like so. And save. Okay, like so. So, okay, we're looking pretty good here. Now what we need to do is we need to wire up the advanced search and have that actually return data. So I'm going to go to plant search activity, and I'm going to press Control M. Right now we don't have a whole lot going on here. I'm going to go to advanced search, and I want to see what's in this search, what this is calling, if anything. I go to properties all by name, and I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to look for on click. Okay. On click isn't calling anything. So I'm going to say on search clicked as my method to call. Okay, on search clicked, and we'll choose OK. And this little edit text, did we ever give this an ID? We did not. ACT plant name. Let's give it the name ACT plant name. It's always a good idea to change these IDs for our layout components because it's much easier to program against them. And okay, 1 second. Now that we have that, let's see. We called this. You know what? You know what I need to do is I need to copy that parameter. I forgot to copy the method name into the clipboard. That's going to make it a lot easier for me when I'm back on the on search click. There we go, when I'm back on the activity. So I choose OK here, and now I'm going to go back to the activity, plant search activity, and there are a couple things I need to do. First of all, I need to make a method that will receive the button click from the search button. Okay, so I need something that will receive that button click. Remember where we put methods. We put them between the open curly and the closed curly of the class, but not within the open curly and closed curly of another method. So I say public void method name view v, and this will receive the button click. I'll put some JavaDoc above this. This will receive the button click from the search button. Okay, on search clicked view v, Control Shift O to organize imports. And what we'll do is we'll have that do a little bit of logic to return data back from this screen to the calling screen. First of all, though, I also need to get a reference to that autocomplete text, and I called it ACT plant name or something like that. The way we do that is we use a method called FindViewByID. Now, that method kind of has a lengthy name, so usually what I do is I start typing find, and you can type the whole thing out if you want, but I find it easier to just start typing the method name and then hold Control and hit space, and Eclipse figures out, because I typed find it figured out what I wanted. It figured out what method I wanted to call. So I call FindViewByID, and I'll use r.id.act. Oh, did it not take? Uh-oh, okay. Well, 1 second, please. Okay, we're gonna... I thought that you know what, you know what I did? I didn't save the layout. Okay, sorry. Let me save the layout. Once I save the layout, it's gonna save that autocomplete name. So now what I can do is I can go back and say FindViewByID, r.id.a. There we go. See, there's ACT plant name. That's going to return to me a reference to this view. The only trick is it's just kind of going in no man's land right now. We're not doing anything with it. This is a method that we call that returns data, and we want to do something with that data. We want to assign that to a variable. So guess what? With my cursor at the left of this line, I'm going to hold Control and press 1, and I'm going to say assign statement to new field. What that means is this will return some kind of data to us. Okay, I want to save that data in a variable. What's a variable? It's a named location in memory that stores data. So we're simply storing this data in a variable, and I'm going to tab, and we'll call it, that's private's fine. I do need to call it AutoCompleteText. That's the data type. And the name, ACT plant name, will be fine. Tab, and I think we're good after that. So I'll just go ahead and hit enter. Oh, come on. I said autocomplete text, and you're good. There we go, we got it. The only trick is it doesn't know what autocomplete text is. That's that special kind of view widget that will autocomplete when we start typing. You should always use that if you can. It's always a good idea to use. It doesn't know what it is, so I do Control-Shift-O, which will tell it to go fetch it. Hopefully I spelled it right, because Control-Shift-O didn't heal it. Okay, all right, maybe we'll have to go look. So we call this... It might, you know what? I believe it's autocomplete text view. Is that what it is? Let's see. I need to make this a bit bigger. Yeah, autocomplete text view. Okay, almost there, almost there. So we're going to call it autocomplete text view, and now Control-Shift-O. Now it found it. The only trick is we have to do something tricky, because this statement here didn't know that it was going to get an autocomplete text view, so we have to do something called casting, where we inform this statement that it will receive an autocomplete text view. So I will cast by putting in parentheses autocomplete text view. There we go. And now all the red lines are gone. This right here, line 27, is an assignment statement. What that means is do whatever is on the right and assign that to the variable which is defined on the left. So do whatever is on the right assign that to the variable which is on the left. That's what an assignment statement is. And what we're doing is we're just getting a reference to this autocomplete text. Okay, we're almost there. Now when we get the search button, what we're going to do is we're going to use that autocomplete text, ACT plant name. Okay, and we're going to say get text, which is going to give us whatever the user typed in there, and then toString, which will make a string out of it. Okay, Control 1, I'm going to assign this to a new local variable called string, let's say plant name. There we go. Okay, and now so I'll put some comments here. Gather the data that the user entered. Okay. Next we'll say get an intent that will return data to the calling screen. Okay, intent. Intent. Well, I'll tell you what. There we go. I'm going to call get intent. Okay, Control 1. Assign a new local variable, intent equals get intent. So we just get the intent that was used to call this activity. Okay, next we'll say add the information that the user entered to this intent. Okay, intent.put extra. Okay, we need a name and a value. Now that's the thing, remember that we defined that constant earlier. Remember we said we associate a value with a name. And remember in our, what did we call it, our other class, the, 1 second, I'm going to Control M. I think we called it Location Finder. Yeah, Location Finder. What I can do now is I can say Location Finder plant name. I can use that same constant, and for the value, we'll use the plant name variable. Syntax is very important here. Make sure that you're consistent with capitalization. Okay, so we're gathering the plant name that the user entered. We're getting the current intent. We're putting that plant name in the intent, and then the last thing we do is let them know we are finished. Okay, and finish. We just call a method called finish, which means we're all done with this screen. Go back to the calling screen. Let them know we're finished. Return what we have. Okay. I'm going to save. Hopefully this all works well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run this in debug mode, but without breakpoints. We're just going to watch it work. After that, I'll run it one more time, but with breakpoints. So Control M. Okay. I right-click, and I choose Debug as Android application. And what should happen then is it should refresh on the Android emulator. That usually takes a few moments, so we'll give that a moment to come up. Oh, actually didn't take too long. Okay, it should refresh in a moment with the screen for our application. And here we are, so let's walk through it. So we're starting with the home screen. I'm going to click on Find Specimen. Okay, we'll give that a second to render. Okay, from Find Specimen now, I'm going to type in Cercis canadensis, which is a red bud. And what I'm expecting is that when I hit search, it's going to return me to the calling screen, and it's going to pop up a toast with this data. Now, as usual, I do a lot of these demonstrations from memory, and it's entirely likely that I could have missed a step or forgotten something, but let's, as my British friends would say, let's have a go at it and see what happens. So I click on search, hold my breath, cross my fingers, all that stuff. And take a look. It did take us back, but it looks like it didn't do anything with the data. Okay, so I'm missing something. And it ends up I missed something small but very important. Okay, in the plant search, what I need to do before I call finish is I need to say that everything went okay. So we're going to say result. One second. Sorry. I have to call a method called setResult. So I start typing setRe, and it will show me what methods I can call. Result code, we're going to say result OK, and you might remember that. Well, if not, we'll see that in a moment. And then for the data, I just pass in the intent. I tell it this is the intent with the data that I wish to return. So where did we see that result OK before? We saw that back on our location finder. Okay, you might recall that we saw result OK back here. So did everything go OK? And then what is sending us data back? Okay, so given that, let me Control M, and we're going to try and debug this one more time. Okay, so we'll give it a second to refresh. Okay, the debugger's attaching now. Should just be a few more moments. Okay, so I'm going to choose Find Specimen. Okay, and for name, I'll say Cercis canadensis. Okay, now search should take me back to the initial screen. I know that worked okay. It should put up a little toast, and it should populate the description with the data Cercis canadensis. So I click on search, and what do we have? Okay, returns to the screen, and there's a quick pop-up there. You might have missed it, but you see it did properly return the data and place it right here in the description field. So we know what works. Now, for part two, it's really important. I always say it's more important to be a good debugger than to be a good programmer. So let's put some breakpoints since we already have this running in the debugger. I'll set one on activity result. I'll set one on invoke search activity. And then over in our plant search, let's see, what do we call that? One moment, I'll find it. Control M and plant search activity. Yep, that's it. I'm going to put one on the on search clicked. Okay, to put a breakpoint, I right click on a line number and I choose set breakpoint or toggle breakpoint. This is really important because what it does is it takes a program and it slows it down and lets us run it one line at a time. That's a very powerful thing to do, especially when learning programming, especially if you're new to programming. So I have breakpoints set in all the important methods. And now what I'm going to do, we'll run through this exercise one more time. I'm going to choose Find Specimen. And what we should see happen is the debugger will catch, and there it goes. Okay, and look at where we are. This is the debugger. Notice that we're within Location Finder. What it's trying to do now is it's trying to pull up that other intent, the plant search activity. Okay, so in the debugger, if I want to execute a line and watch the next line, I simply choose F6. So I choose F6 here, or you can also choose the step over button. Not much to this method. I'm going to go ahead and choose play. The next thing that should happen is the onCreate method should be called in the plant search activity, and that's what will actually render that screen. So sure enough, here we go. I choose F6, I choose F6 again, and again, not much going on here, so I can just let this play, and this will render the advanced search screen. Okay, debugger, great stuff. For the name, this time, let's say Asimina triloba, the pawpaw. Okay, there we go. And then I'll choose search. What we should see now is that on search clicked should activate. It should pull the text out that we typed in here, put that into a variable, put that into an intent, and then say everything went okay and return from that method. So I choose search. Okay, debugger hits. I choose F6. Now here's one nice thing about the debugger. Do you see this variable string plant name? We can look at that and we can even change the value if we want. if we look up in the Variables tab, and there we go, Asimina triloba, that's the plant name that I entered. Okay, we could change that if we want. We can watch it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit F6 and F6. So we're putting the data into this, what we call extra. We're telling it everything went okay, and then we are returning. So I choose F8. And what's going to happen, notice we're on plant search activity now. As soon as this finishes, it's going to jump back to location finder. So from plant search to location finder. And I go ahead and I choose play. Okay, now we're in location finder and we're saying what was the result? How did things go? Okay, that's fine. Okay, and what called us? Was it plant search? If so, let's find that name that's associated with this plant name constant. I can even mouse over and it will show me the value with Semina triloba. That mouse over is really, really nice. Trust me, if you're having any trouble doing any programming exercise, it's always a good idea to use the debugger. It takes a couple times to learn it. You have to try it out and get frustrated a couple times, but it's very well worthwhile because you can actually watch the program run at your own pace and you can watch the data in the program. Cool stuff. So we choose F6 to put up the toast, and then we choose F6 to take the text that we have and put it in the description, and we're all good. And we choose F8, and the next thing we should see is our screen, our initial screen, the GPS screen, with the Semina triloba populated. So there we go. We looked at a couple things. We looked at start activity for result. We looked at on activity result. We looked at finish, and we took a quick look at the debugger. More of these to come. So what we're going to do, this pretty much wraps up what I have to say for explicit intents. When you have an intent and you say explicitly what you want to have happen with it. In our next lecture, we're going to look at implicit intents, where we just say what we want to do, and we let the system figure it out for us. We let it find a matching service for us. As a beginning programming course, that's important to leverage, because if you can tie together software modules, even little software modules that already exist, instead of writing it yourself, that's going to help you get a program to market much, much faster. I wish I had followed that advice. I kept writing things like a camera capture and a file chooser all by myself when they're perfectly good intents that will do it and you can call with just a few lines. So we're going to take a look at that, and we're going to specifically look at how we can call multiple activities from this location finder and have those activities return data. And we can determine which one is returning data. And again, that's where these if tests, that's where the debugger is really, really important. The debugger, the reason it's called a debugger, is it helps you to find bugs in your program. So that's all I have for this lecture. I look forward to the next lecture where we will talk about implicit intents. Thank you.